Hey guys, Brian Todd of Camille Woodworking here, and for this video I wanted to show you how I made my mid-century record hutch. I basically started off with a need. I had no shelf space left for my growing record collection, and I knew that each record was 12 by 12 and 8 by 8. And so I wanted it to be about 3 feet long by about 25 inches high, and then come out about 16 inches from the wall. So those were my rough dimensions that I figured out, and the rest I just kind of figured out as I went. So here's the whole process. Enjoy.
So I designed the whole thing in SketchUp, just rough dimensions, to just kind of get an idea on paper. And on the right side I wanted to have a speaker grill that would house all of my audio equipment and just really clean up the area a lot. And then on the left would be all shelf storage for the actual records. But you are my strength. I had some beautiful 4/4 walnut that I knew I wanted to use, so I needed to rip it down to 6 inches so that I could flat joint it on my joiner. The first step in surfacing is to flat joint your board face down on the joiner. This gives you a perfectly flat face that will act as the foundation for all other surfaces. After you have one face perfectly flat, the next step is to run it through the planer with the perfectly flat face down. This will ensure that the top of that board matches the bottom. After that, I rough cut everything to length, so I basically set my stops on my miter station and then was able to just make repeat cuts. Now that I have both faces of these boards perfectly flat, I'm going to go ahead and joint them. So I'm just basically going to run them through the joiner on the edge and get one edge perfectly flat. After you have one edge perfectly jointed, the next step is to run it through your table saw with the jointed edge against the fence. This will give you a perfectly square board. This also ensures that every board is consistent. After marking my boards and getting the layout just right, the next thing I do is I go to my Festool domino. Basically, the Festool domino is a biscuit joiner on steroids. It adds strength and keeps all the boards perfectly lined up when you put them in the clamps. It's a good way of just keeping everything really consistent and flat. The trick with any process that involves a lot of the same steps is to do all the steps at the same time. This keeps your efficiency up. After my panels were dry, I took them out of the clamps and then I squared them up using my Festool track saw. I left one edge unsquared so that I could just run it through my table saw for its final dimension. I then flattened each panel with the drum sander to its final 3/4 inch thickness. I then ran them through my table saw to get the final dimension. I then mitered each corner. I did this on the table saw because I figured it would be easiest. You can see that I actually had to move my workbench out of the way so that I could raise the blade up far enough to make these cuts. Since I'd already run these panels through the drum sander at 80 grit, the only thing left to do was to hit it with 120 and 180. I just sanded the inside panels because I knew that it was going to be virtually impossible to sand after I had glued it up. I then added 3 6mm dominoes to every corner. This would ensure that it would be a really square glue up, and then test fitted the entire thing. Once I was happy with the fit, I went ahead and added glue. This was a really tricky process to get it all together, but with a little tapping of my rubber mallet, it made it really easy. You can see here that I actually made a mistake. I meant for the side panels to go vertically, not horizontally. This will cause it to shift and move in a different way, and it may not be ideal. Once all the clamps were in place, I just checked them with a square. I then turned to my Festool domino again to get the door panels all glued up. I laid them out in a way that I thought the sapwood would be really appealing, basically putting the sapwood together, and then put them in the clamps. I then needed to cut the speaker door trim pieces. I found a piece with a lot of sapwood in it that I thought would look really cool, and then ran them through the table saw to ensure that they were 2 inches. After laying out each piece so that the sapwood faced inward, I then dominoed each corner with 4mm dominoes, glued them, and put them in the clamps.